Welcome to the Transformation Talks podcast, in-depth conversations on transformation with Rajiv Dingra, founder and CEO of RDNX Network.
Hello and welcome to yet another edition of the Transformation Talks podcast with me, Rajiv Dingra. Today we are extremely excited. We have someone who is a global media leader. Let me first give you an introduction of who we have on today's podcast. It is Ben Jankowski. He is the Senior Vice President, Global Media for Mastercard. In this role, he's responsible for managing the Mastercard investment in marketing communications. This includes working with global, regional, and local marketing teams, as well as agency partners to drive engagement and preference among Mastercard's core constituents. Ben has helped drive business success with the investments, driving productivity, innovation, and impact in a very competitive marketplace. He has led teams that have been recognized with multiple awards for Mastercard's work around the world. Prior to Mastercard, Ben held roles virtually in every part of the media agency process, whether planning, trading, both domestically in US as well as in China, as well as running global business, serving clients such as GE, PepsiCo, Johnson & Johnson, among many, many others. Ben is recognized in the marketing industry as a media leader and serves in leadership roles in industry groups such as Association of National Advertisers and World Federation of Advertisers, among others. Ben is a part of the new generation of marketers that are driving ownership and change on important media topics. And his work has helped shape some of the industry-leading initiatives today, including brand safety, cross-media measurement, privacy, among others. Ben is a frequent speaker on industry events and has spoken at almost every global media event and advertising event out there, be it Cannes Lion, CES, Festival of Media, Advertising Week in both UK and US, among many, many others. Ben is also passionate about growing the next generation of media professionals through various efforts at Temple University, his alma mater. We are privileged and proud to welcome Ben Jankowski to the Transformation Talks podcast. Welcome, Ben.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate the opportunity, Rajiv.
Great. Ben, you had such a illustrious career, I think almost 2.5 decades plus and going strong in, media and marketing. And you probably have had the front row seat in seeing, how marketing and advertising has changed from traditional to digital, given your agency background, and then most recently with Mastercard. Tell us, what do you feel is the future of digital marketing, in specific with the current cookieless future in context of privacy moves with several players? You probably have a better view globally than anybody else on this.
Well, I'm not sure I have a better view than anyone else, but I mean, it's certainly one of the biggest questions that we have to tackle today. And I think the most important thing, different people have different points of view on this, but I'm pretty convinced that the sky isn't falling. The world is not going to come to an end, and we're going to figure out how to replace the current environment that we're in. I think it's obvious that we have to, test and learn our way through it. I think one of the benefits of a delay, we showed a slide recently. We were doing a presentation, and we threw up a couple of headlines for the presentation. And the only thing, all about like the end of the cookieless world, all that stuff. And one of the things that we put at the end was, these are all headlines from the year 2013. So we've been talking about this for a really long time. And I think that the latest delay just gives us more time. I'm pressing my organization, don't give yourself the excuse to wait another year to do something about this. We, the industry, including Mastercard, we have to test our way. We have to test and learn our way through this, right? There's a lot of different things that we have to tackle. We have to tackle, what are we going to do about identity? And what's our data strategy? What are we going to do about audiences and targeting? And how do we activate? It sounds really good to have a great data strategy. If you can't activate it, then you're just talking to yourself. And lastly, most importantly, how do you measure and report? So I think that, today there's over 100 solutions. We had a partner who showed us the list of all the companies who have an interest in identity today. Now, all of them are not, long-term players in, solutions, but we have to figure out where we need to place our bets. We have to test and learn our way through it. It's either a bigger challenge or a bigger opportunity being a global advertiser, because we advertise in 64 countries. And one of the things that we've learned is the same thing doesn't work in the small little country that I'm sitting in right now, which is the United States, as well as it works in Africa, works in Latin America, works in Asia. So, we have the opportunity. We have to test and learn our way through, where should we place our bets? And that needs to be, a rigorous, disciplined process. We need to figure out, take the 100 or so identity solutions that are out there and figure out where to place our bets. And that's a lot of work. But it needs to be done, and we need to figure it out. We're starting to test and learn through stuff. And one of the most encouraging things is we did one test with one partner in a less developed country. I won't get into too many details. And the answer was the cookieless solution that one of our technology partners had, provided the same results as a cookie solution. So, we're confident. The sky's not falling. We'll figure it out. Will we have to be more, contextually relevant than we have to be personal? Probably, and that's okay, right? So, we have there's a tipping point between, if we do an amazing job with contextual relevance, which, to be honest, you can do without having the deeply personalized messaging that some people do today. In some cases, that's just as effective as you need to be. So, sky's not falling. But that being said, we got a lot of work to do to figure out what the plan is.
Yeah, and just on this topic, I think global advertisers are going a couple of different ways, right? Some of them are building their own CDP. Some of them think CDP is the solution. Some of them are looking at efforts to build their own graph IDs with first-party data. Yep. Which route do you think is, based on your wealth of experience, which are the multiple routes, and is there a single route for global advertisers at all, or there are different paths for different advertisers?
Yeah, there's not. I don't think there's a single route I don't even think there's a single route for an individual advertiser, because I would be very surprised if everything around your business, including your identity graph, your access to first-party information, if you have the same first-party information in Western Europe and developed countries like the US and Western Europe as you do in less developed parts of the world, you are, that's an abnormality, right? So through the mix of whether they be partners, whether in some cases they be retail customers, whether they be other places that you get data, in almost every case, and it's certainly the case for Mastercard, our data graph looks very different depending on the country. So I think that's pretty common. I find very few advertisers who can sit there and say on virtually anything, and identity is one of those things that you would add to that pile, where the same conditions exist everywhere in the world. Like every country has got its nuances. I think one of the pieces of magic that we have to do as global people is we happen to advertise in 64 countries. There aren't 64 different answers, but there isn't one. So us trying to figure out how do we build that common denominator? How do we build that puzzle? If you think about it like a puzzle, how do we build that for ourselves? In some cases, it will be, we will have the opportunity to use some of our own data. The biggest, challenge for us is, privacy and safety. There's nothing more important to our brand than the safety and security of our customers and our consumers' identities, right? And we won't cross that. That's one of the first things that we won't cross. So, it's going to change. I don't mean to sound I'm not trying to complicate it, but it's also not as simple as, I got one solution and I can roll that everywhere in the world, because it's not the case in my experience.
I agree with you. And one of the conversations we were having on this podcast earlier was this comparison between deterministic and probabilistic models of identifying identity. And the common consensus is that deterministic is humanly not possible in all countries. while some players do it in the US. But for global advertisers like yourself, it is clear, at least today, that it will be a combination of deterministic and probabilistic, and probably 70% will be probabilistic post 2023. Would that be correct to say?
I haven't thought of the number in the way of like 70-30, 80-20. I haven't thought of the number that way, but I think that definitely it's going to be a combination. It's because of our data sets and our business sophistication and what we get from partners. Yeah, there's definitely not one path. And the marriage between probabilistic and deterministic is, we're going to have to figure that out every marketer is going to have to figure it out. And I think that, I haven't thought through what that percentage is, but I agree with you fundamentally.
Okay, excellent. And moving from identity, which is definitely a evolving topic as we speak today in 2021, we still have 2-3 years to see where that goes. But moving from that to silos, digital media and marketing, especially media execution and media data, media reporting, all of it has a lot of silos that has come in. There's this industry wave of open web versus walled garden, if I may say so, with the rise of the mighty Trade Desk. And of course, Google, Facebook still cornering more than 60 to 70% of global media spends on digital marketing. And how do you foresee the problem of silos? Because now there are so many social platforms, so many digital platforms, so many DSPs which have USPs in specific markets. For someone who's sitting on the chair of a global media and wears the hat of a global advertiser, how do you solve for media and data and reporting silos in digital marketing, which seems to get more and more fragmented?
No, I think you're right. I think it's been a phenomenon. I would take it a step further. It's not just social media or the big platforms. Depending upon the country, broadcasters have worked to build their own ecosystems. Almost everybody has. It used to be you used to be able to, people would go out and sell you data so that you could, target. And in today's day and age, fewer people want to sell you data, and more people want you to buy media through them, while you're using their data. So, and that's not, while that helps the media owner and it creates a bespoke environment for them to work in, it doesn't help us. It doesn't help me tell the overall holistic picture. So the problem of solving this, it's a very big problem. And I call it, it's a generational opportunity, right? We've been fighting this problem at its root for not just since, Google and Facebook. We've been fighting this problem as long as there've been, multiple media. And I think that it really kind of goes to, if we think about all the things that make it's been compounded, because all the things that make the new digital landscape amazing also come with risks. Today, the most important solve we have to do in this space, the consumer experience today sucks, being really blunt. Like, consumers have become disgusted with ads. More and more ad blockers, fewer and fewer attention. Now, why is that? Because we can't manage the experience. We show them too many ads. They see too many ads. We show them irrelevant ads. We as an industry, we have to solve this. We have to solve for this. And I think that, the efforts that people are making in the cross-media measurement space is where I think the industry needs to go. And it requires uncommon collaboration, right? So, we have to break down the silos of getting, everybody in their own little world. So, some people have been successful. People have been successful. Marketers have realized, and we talked about in your introduction, we talked about, some of the efforts that we're making as the marketing organization. Marketers have realized that this ecosystem isn't making enough progress, and that's being polite. That's the understatement of the day. So the groups like the WFA, of which you called out, I'm the chair of the media committee, the media forum, and the ANA and ISBA, which are, as the listeners may know, are the big associations both globally and in the UK and the US. We're working really hard at trying to make progress with marketers, agencies, platforms, and associations, and other media owners, right? So we're trying to pull those people together so that we can build a model, and we've got, some of these partners, we've got Google and Facebook, and some TV broadcasters sitting at a table figuring out how we can build privacy-safe identity solutions so that we can truly, once and for all, manage cross-media measurement performance. We have to figure that out. Individual companies can't go off road doing their own thing, and I know a lot of people are trying. It's interesting, right? We've gone, without getting on too much of a tangent, we used to always teach people that the first aim of success was to be differentiated. So everybody would take their own media type and they'd build their own differentiated measurement scheme to facilitate their business. And that made sense for their business. But as a marketer, if I've got, 1 ruble or drachma or, name your favorite currency to spend, I got to figure out where to spend it across all these platforms. So until we make progress, until we find that uncommon collaboration that I talk about, it's going to be really hard. And I think that we're making progress. ISBA and the ANA and the WFA are making progress in their own countries. And, I think we have to do something like that. And that requires a village. It's not going to happen with just marketers. It's got to happen. We have to get the platforms. The big digital platforms are engaged because they'd love to build a global solution because they don't want to run around and have to build 100 of them. And I think that other parts of the ecosystem are starting to realize the value for everybody in figuring out, how to make the supply chain better. And again, ultimately, it comes down to consumers and creating a better experience for consumers. Hopefully that made sense.
No, I love how you defined it, generational opportunity. I love how you said that because, and what I hear you say that, yes, of course, there are individual companies that are creating aggregation platforms, but what it would also need is all these different stakeholders to come together and sort of work together to make sure that at the end of the day, the client who pays for all this advertising is not left, trying to piece 200 pieces of puzzles together.
I can't put the puzzles all together by myself. We have to build a bridge to put those puzzles together.
I hear you, but let's just digging this a little deeper.
Yeah.
In an ideal scenario, what would be the holy grail for a global marketer? It would be at least on the digital marketing front, where data is available through APIs and stuff, to basically put all data, dashboard, creative, media, reporting, everything in a single platform that's harmonized. And possibly the ability to then target across different channels on a single console, as well as have cross-media analytics at least across the digital platforms that currently are siloed.
Yeah, I mean, we'd love to say we want to try. I mean, digital platforms, depending upon the country, only represent, 40, 50% of usage, right? Maybe 60, 70% in some countries. So again, if you're asking me my holy grail, I would love to try to solve for all video. So that's linear TV and that's digital video. And video is not that be all and end all. I appreciate there's a lot going on in audio and visual. I mean, I'm not naive nor trying to be too video centric, but let's face it, videos where probably, a large chunk, probably 75, 80% of, if not investment, but effectiveness goes. I would love to solve for being able to understand the consumer experience across, being able to understand, manage, and optimize the consumer experience across video. So stop presenting you and me. If you watch streaming TV in the United States, and I watch a lot of sports on streaming platforms, I see the same ad 20, 30 times, and that's just not acceptable. It just turns people off. So my holy grail is building the ability for us to be able to manage those consumer experiences so that we can be more productive and more valuable.
Very interesting. It seems like the first question and the second question come together to form the Holy Grail, right? You're talking about a graph ID that allows you to know who you are targeting and hence control that person's experience, and a unification platform that allows you cross-media activation, reporting, monitoring, optimization, so that you can then at a flick of a switch move from media to media and optimize that experience for this consumer knowing his graph ID.
I want Rajiv to see, I want you to see the right amount of frequency. And when you see enough frequency for one message, I want to move you to another message. I want to be able to manage that experience. Yeah. And I think that's, you know, that sounds really pie in the sky. And it's, you know, it's very aspirational, but that's kind of, I think that's the root cause of consumer, you know, the growth in ad blockers and the growth in, you know, the amount of dislike of advertising is rooted in, we don't engage our audiences well enough. So I think that's what we have to try to figure out. It's a huge, and again, it's a generational opportunity. If it were easy, we would have done it 30 years ago. It's really hard. And there's a lot of dynamics. And to be honest, one of the things that we've learned is, I feel a little, you know, I'm not trying to be too controversial. The challenges are less technical and more, you know, more political and more, you know, business, you know, risk than they are technical. Because the technical, you know, aspects aren't easy, but they're not as hard as people's uncertainty with, you know, different audiences on different groups, uncertainties with changing the status quo. Some people love the status quo and hate it at the same time. I've had conversations with media owners who hate that the digital companies have gone in. Like, you know, I've had many conversations with media owners who hate the fact that Google and Facebook have grown their advertising spend so fast. And at the same time, when I sit in a room and say, well, that's why I'm here, because we need to find uncommon collaboration, you need to measure alongside of them, they're uncomfortable with that too. So it's like, you can't have it both ways. You know, you can't have your cake and eat it too, to use an American expression. It's like, people have to be, you know, people have to take risks, and people have to, it's, you know, again, it's a generational opportunity for a reason. It's really hard, but I think we're making progress.
That is amazing. So let me, and what we're really talking about is as all media becomes more and more digital, including a lot of availability of TV targeting through CTV, you know, it is an eventuality. 5 years, 7 years, 10 years down the line. When you say video, all video will be digital eventually, including video.
100%.
You know, yeah. So what we're really talking about are unification of two stacks, you know, the MarTech and ad tech stacks. And do you see this a challenge? Because today the industry, as you rightly pointed out in the beginning, they're just hundreds and thousands of solutions, 100 identity players. If you were to combine MarTech and ad tech players and say they are MadTech players, there'd be at least 8,000 or more. Globally, right? What do you believe needs to change in the current market for better integration between these two stacks that applies to global marketers like yourself? Because, I mean, honestly, I'm surprised that more players are not building for global clients that contribute a very large percentage of global advertising budgets.
Yeah, it's a great question. You hit the nail on the head of one of the biggest things that we think about. And people, you know, sometimes when I'm doing, you know, I'm talking to people, doing interviews and things like that, people ask you, like, what keeps you awake at night, Ben? It's those damn Lumascape charts. I mean, it's, you know, it's an amazing, you know, piece, but if everybody's seen those charts, the Lumascape and Terry Kawaja and Luma, the investment bank,
right?
You know, they create these charts, and, you know, there's 5,000 companies just in the media ecosystem. We don't need 5,000 companies in the media ecosystem. I'm not sure that, I'm not 100% convinced that integrating marketing tech and media tech is, you know, ad tech and media tech is the answer. I mean, I don't know if that's the biggest opportunity, but we definitely have to thin out the herd. We definitely have to focus. I mean, at one point, we talked earlier in the podcast about everybody who's got a piece of data doesn't want to sell it to help people target now. They want to be a media owner. And I think that helps compound the problem, because it's just like the same challenge that we had before around trying to put the puzzle together. We have the same problem in advertising technology, right? So we have, whether it be across all the different things. I mean, ad serving sounds like the simplest, easiest thing there is to do. But if you've ever had a exercise where you try to say, is everybody in your ecosystem, in my case, in my 64 countries, is everybody using the exact same taxonomy in ad serving? That is not an assumption. That's like, there's always somebody out there who, in the case of Mastercard, it's a great example. They spell it with, do you spell it, is there a capital C or just a C? Is there a space between the C? And that sounds really stupid, but it's the most basic thing that we get to. And if we don't do the basic blocking and tackling right around the most simplest tech forms, it all fails, right? So we have to figure out, we have to thin out the herd, right? I am surprised there hasn't been more integration between technology partners. I think there's some really interesting things that are going on, right? Obviously, Google has their own self-standing stack, and some people. I was on the phone with a friend last week who is, who's a sophisticated marketer, and they do everything with the Google stack. They said, we're just going to keep it all together, and that probably helps them find consistency. I'm not sure necessarily that we've made the determination that Google is not always best in class in every single market. So the question becomes, as long as you are not buying one system, you have to figure out how to cobble that all together. I think that there's too many players out there. We need to focus on the most important things. And I also think that we don't spend enough time driving real business success. I report to the global chief marketing officer, Raja Manar. And if you ask Raja what his objectives are, it's, build a strong brand for our customers and consumers and drive revenue. When you sit there and say, how many times do we sit there and look at our media technology stacks, and we look at the things that we measure, and it's click-through rates and viewability and all these things that, that don't connect to, real tangible business solutions. So I would say, I'm rambling around a little bit. I would say, I want to focus and we got to get away from 5,000 companies, and everybody's got to focus and be organized and be specific about what are the 5 or 6 different categories you need to excel at, and driving them through the organization. I do think there should be a thinning out of the process again. Right now, we have too many people, too many DSPs, or too many supply choices, and we have to thin that out.
I totally agree. And that's interesting. So you're saying, not just the multiple players, but how does a marketer draw a straight line from investments to revenue using MarTech and AdTech? Can someone solve for that? Right?
Yeah, because it's like, unless you're a performance, unless you're a direct, and you can manage your own channels, if you're, digital marketer selling app downloads, or you're literally selling transactions online, you're a travel company booking revenue, things like that. And they're, unless you're one of those companies, making that leap, if you have any degree of brand marketing, making that leap in this ecosystem is really hard.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And coming from that comes our next question. Some are making that leap, right? Which is essentially digital first brands. You're right. They probably can take digital in-house. Amazon does it possibly, but there has been a media in-housing stroke programmatic in-housing. Sort of marketers moving media excellence center in-house, leaving the operations externally, but unifying sort of investing in data science, investing in tech, and sort of scaling that in-house piece. In which cases do you think in-housing is workable, and in which they don't? And do you really believe that global businesses which are not classically digital first will ever be able to in-house globally, or just pockets regionally?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's probably the one I debate with my marketer friends the most. I have a very specific point of view, and it is pretty anti in-housing. I think that I see very few cases where in-housing really, really works. So I see the attraction. I see where people say, well, I have a lot of data and I need to protect it, which makes perfect sense. But if you think about, so you have two choices. You have a lot of data and you want to protect it. You have two choices. One, you can work with your privacy lawyers and build a airtight, rock solid, language contract, which is not easy. I understand and appreciate it. I've spent, some of our data privacy agreements have taken a really long time to get done. So I can get a great ironclad data privacy agreement in place with my partners, whether it be an agency, whether it be a technology company, whoever's buying my media for me, or I can bring it in-house and I don't have as many security concerns about my data, but what do I have to do? I have to go buy technology. I have to go replicate that same technology. So many of my friends I've said, when you truly mean in-housing, do you mean, literally going buying technology and putting people in your four walls with hands on keyboard? How do you get the best people? I'm convinced I can't get the best people to want to be a programmatic buyer just for one single brand or one single company. So how do I attract the best talent? How do I get that best technology? And then the other part is unless it's a very unique business, and I'll talk about that in a sec, how do you integrate programmatic with everything else? If, let's say digital's 50% of my spend. I'm a big consumer-driven brand. Let's say digital's half my spend. And let's say that programmatic is, let's say it's 75% of that. That's only a third of my spend. How do I integrate a third of my spend with the other 66% of my spend that you've got somebody else doing the work? So I'm a fan of, I want to keep everything, together. I think that it's easier to get that great contract in place. I'm still agency. I still think the agencies are our best resource, not just because, as you mentioned in the intro, I was an agency guy for a long time, right? And I live it and breathe it, and I'm still sensitive to their plight. There's a lot of things they have to change, and I suspect we'll talk about that. I still think that keeping things within agencies is still the best route to go for the things I just talked about. Now, the exception would be if I'm a performance marketer, the same example I used before. If I'm a performance marketer and I'm just looking at, cost per leads, cost per acquisition, cost per bookings, things like that. If I'm doing most of my marketing digitally and I'm really measuring results in real time, that's probably an exception. But other than that, I think that too many people, it sounds cool and easy. Now, the other qualifier is also, what do people think about when they say I'm in-housing? Now, is in-housing me going out and picking a partner and telling the agency to go work with that partner? To me, that's not in-housing. That's, specifying a product and having the agency execute. But to me, in-housing is you've taken that process, perhaps bought a piece of technology, and you moved hands on keyboard inside your four walls. And I think in very few cases that works.
Makes sense. So what you're saying is, if in-housing is real-time access to your data, reporting, activation, a graph ID, all of that access real-time on a single platform to you, while your agency does the grunt work, so as to say, of strategy and execution, that still is in-housing from a data insight, strategy, and what you call access perspective at a global level, drill down to, let's say, a regional and local level. But that would be the ideal situation of the benefits of in-housing without the headaches of in-housing, which is hiring people on your roles and constantly trying to build a product yourself. I
just don't see people doing that. I want to keep the agency involved. I am a lot more active than my predecessors were, and we were, about picking who the right partners are. If we think about our technology stack, we were blessed with a really good partner, a consultant who helped us make our technology really simple. We broke it into seven buckets, and none of them will surprise you, but we kept our technology stack into a place where it was manageable and understandable. And we told the agency to go execute against that, right? So, we don't, we may pick our partners, and a lot of people define in-housing that way. I've talked to many friends of marketers who are like, well, they say they're in-housing just because it sounds cool, but it really just means they picked the partner and told the agency, go work with this DSP, this trade desk, this technology, brand safety partner, et cetera. So if you're really talking about in-housing, about like literally your own people on keyboard, not a fan.
Sure, fair. And let's, we are at the last question for this podcast. In the interest of time, we wanted to get your views on what needs to change in the media agency and media buying world in this coming decade. What kind of disruptions do you foresee? And maybe what's your wish that there would be some change? If you could give us an insight into that.
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and we've been talking about it. Again, I was an agency guy. I started as an agency guy. I was, there when agencies became separated from media agencies separated from creative agencies. And a lot of people think, oh, that was the problem, and we should have never separated. And the solution is moving the creative agency and the media agencies together. The good old days weren't that good for media people. The product that we separated because we made a better product. So, there definitely needs to be an evolution. I think there's a couple of things I would say. Agencies have to stop thinking that they control everything. I would love the ideal scenario for my agency to think that they're an orchestrator and they have an orchestra baton rather than trying to control everything. And there are financial reasons why people want to control everything, but it doesn't work. I talked earlier about, uncommon collaborations. The agency, in my opinion, agencies can't think that some of these things are proprietary information. Cross-media measurement should not be an agency proprietary piece of work. The industry has to pull together or it's not going to go to scale. Mark Pritchard, who is the CMO of P&G, he mentioned at a trade conference a couple of years ago, it took him a really long time to realize, even though he's the biggest marketer in the United States, it makes him about 5% of the total market share in the United States. So it shouldn't be, agencies doing a lot of the work that they do, they used to think was confidential work product. I get to these, I use the word uncommon collaboration a lot. How we all make progress around things like cross-media measurement, things like brand safety, things like, solidarity and making sure that, minority audiences, which is a big issue in the United States right now. And it's probably, it's going to be a big issue in other countries. Those are industry-wide things we have to evolve and not so we have to build those uncommon collaborations. It's been really slow, right? Part of it, and to be fair, it's not all the agency's fault. Part of it being really slow is the client's fault. Clients continue to beat up agencies on fees. And not to say that I don't have my moments, but I think that, my agency experience has made me a good client of knowing what's fair and reasonable and knowing what's not fair and so clients beating up agencies on fees, clients thinking that, marketers thinking that agencies are banks, and trying to stretch out payment terms and stuff like that. So part of this is the marketer's fault, but it's really, really slow. So building that uncommon collaboration, realizing they can't control everything, but, providing a real value add to, integrate everything together is really, really powerful. And I think that's the wave of the future.
That is amazing. Thank you, Ben. I think there have been some amazing nuggets of insights as part of this podcast. Just to summarize for our audiences, the generational opportunity is how to solve the media and data silos, and not just in digital marketing, but in marketing and media marketing as a whole. Programmatic in-housing only constitutes about, even if you are an aggressive programmatic advertiser, only constitutes about 33% of your overall spend. The bigger challenge is how do you, connect that 33% to the rest 66%. And I think the word that you used, I'll use it again, the uncommon collaboration, the need of the hour of the industry so that they can agree on a graph ID, so that they can agree on unification of media, centralization of data, and if possible, simplification of execution on the media front, so that marketers like Ben and others can scale their spends, not just on digital, but overall the operation of advertising globally can become more effective and valuable at the end to the consumers whose experience needs to improve. Right.
The value to the consumer is what we're all doing this for. We're investing to interact with consumers, and I think you nailed it right on the head. It's like our goal is to make consumers want to consume our content, and I think all the things that you summarized were it's a good summary of my overall themes.
Great. Thanks so much, Ben. I really appreciate it. This was an exciting conversation, and please do subscribe to the Transformation Talks, and I'm sure you're going to enjoy this conversation. To all our listeners, thank you so much. Thank you, Ben.
Thank you. Thanks for the time. Thanks for the invite.
Thanks for listening to the Transformation Talks podcast hosted by Rajiv Dingra, founder and CEO of RD&X Network. Tune in next week for another interesting episode.